Hello makers, and welcome to Share Stitchery. I'm Catherine Harris, and today I thought we'd do a lovely flowy maxi dress. I found a fantastic pattern from McCalls M7745, and it is absolutely fantastic for your next make. Now I decided to use a crinkle chiffon from Minerva, and I'll leave the link in the description down below for you. So let's get to it. Before you start cutting out your bodice, you need to figure out what cup size you're going to need to cut out. And in order to do that, we need to do a couple of measurements. So you want to get out your measuring tape here, and our first measurement is going to be our traditional bust measurement. So that comes around the back and around the fullest part of your bust, or the apex of your breast here. And so you're going to want to take that note in and just note that it is parallel from behind here. Your second measurement that you're going to take is going to be your high bust. So that's right up underneath your armpits here. And you're going to keep it parallel on your back as well. And just taking it up here and then getting this measurement put in place. Writing down those measurements I just took for my bust and high bust and doing a bit of math here. And mine is 1.5 inches difference, meaning I'm an AB cup for the pattern piece. So now we know which pattern pieces to cut out. And right here, I am making some adjustments because I am making the long version B, but adding the ruffle that we have in C. So I'm just doing a bit of math here to calculate how long each of the pattern pieces are so that I can add in the ruffles. So I go to my book here and I'm going to make a couple of calculations. So the skirt on pattern AC is 37 inches, and we're going to multiply that by 2 because we have 2 skirt pieces, and that gives us 74 inches. And then it's 20 inches long for that, multiplied by 2 gives us a total of 114. Then for view D, we've got 53 inches for the one pattern piece times 2 gives us 106, and 29.5 inches also multiplied by 2 gives us 59. When we add those up together, we get 165 inches for our pattern pieces. Now we need to calculate the ruffle. So pattern piece AC, the ruffle is 32.5 inches plus 32 plus 33. Multiplying that by 2 gives us 195 inches. Now we take that 114 and we're going to divide that by 95. So we take the 114, we divide it by 95, and it gives us 0.584. Now I'm just doing some math to check here to make sure my numbers are correct. So I'm taking the 114, dividing it by our fraction, and it does give us that 195 inches for the total amount of the ruffle. So then that creates the formula that we can use to determine how long the ruffle needs to be with our modified version. So we take the 165 inches that pattern D is, and we divide it by that fraction of 0.584, which gives us 282 inches for the ruffle. And so then we are going to subtract the 282 inches for the ruffle minus the 195 inches for the AC ruffle. that gives us an additional 87 inches. So we have 3 pattern pieces, so we're going to divide that 87 inches by 3, giving us an additional 29 inches that we need to add to each ruffle piece. So I decided to get out the tissue paper, and we're just going to measure our pattern pieces so we get the same width for the ruffle. And I'm going to do that 3 times because we have 3 pattern pieces that we're going to do. And then I'm going to cut that out. Make sure you use your paper scissors, not your fabric scissors, to do this. And I'm going to tape one end, and I like to do this dividing in the middle as opposed to the end. So we're just going to tape that in place. And then you're going to make sure that those pattern pieces are the 29 inches that we would like to add to the ruffle. So now we're going to cut out a bodice front piece, which is piece 1. So we're going to cut that out, and we're going to transfer all of the markings, paying close attention to our dart placement. And now for this, we are going to work with piece 1, and we're going to sew the darts in place. So I like to put my pins through, going in on one side and making sure that they hit the line on the other side. This ensures that we have a good placement for the dart. You could always use tailor tacks. So once we've got those stitched and pressed in place, we have our bodice front. So next step, we're going to take piece 8 and 9 to create our sleeves. So we're going to attach the sleeves on the curved edge first. So we're just going to pin those into place. And now we have our sewn sleeve, and we're going to attach this to our bodice back, which is piece 10. So we're going to place that on, making sure to match our notches. And because it is a curve, using a lot of pins is rather helpful. And now that we've got it attached to the back, we're going to attach it to our bodice front, which is piece 1. And so we're going to attach the sleeves there in the same manner as we did the back. Take it to our machine and get that stitched up. So now we have our completed bodice front and back. We're just going to attach it at the side seams. So you are going to put right sides together and pin down each of the side seams. And then we are going to take that to the machine and get it stitched. Now that we've got the muslin all sewn up, it's time to try it on and get an idea for fit. So try it on over either a tight shirt or the bra or undergarments that you're going to be wearing with it, just to kind of see how things lay and how you like it. I'm noticing a large area around the armholes here, so we're going to do a bit of an adjustment on that. Okay, so now that I've got this on the dress form here, I'm going to flip it inside out, and I'm just matching the shoulder seams along the shoulder seams of my dress form here, so that we can look to try and get a good fit here. So we're going to get some pins, and I'm just going to pin it where it is going to be so that we can have a good idea of where that looks, and then start taking some things in the bust area, since it is just a little bit too big. So you can see that there is a lot of excess fabric here along this side. So what we can do is we can look to take that in with a dart. And so we are going to just expand this dart, pinch the fabric where we would like it. Just taking it in to the side so you can see a bit better. And I'm just pinching and putting the pins in here. And do the same on this dart as well. This will kind of help some of this armhole ease that's also built in there. And then what we will also do is when we take this off, I'll compare the amounts on each side to make sure that they are truly even. Make sure this cross, when we've got the crisscross, is crisscrossing right here in the middle. See where we've got our two little points? That is where our ideal cross will be. I'm just going to pin this just to make sure. Now the nice thing about this is it's a wrap dress, so you will tie in the waist. So the waist gets tied in like that. We're just making sure that the bust area here fits accordingly. And I think that looks pretty good. And let's take a look at the back, just make sure there isn't any extra fabric here in the back. And it actually looks pretty good. There might be a little bit in here that we can look to take in just along this side. There we go. We've got a nice flat back. Shoulders look actually really, really good here. And then we've got the front. So now we are going to transfer those markings to our paper pattern. So where we had pinned, we're going to trace that with our washout marker. And then we're going to determine how far away we're going to place the dots for the dart. And you're going to put that on the paper pattern, mark that out and draw out your new dart. And then where we took it in on the side seams, we are going to add that in and draw that as well. So now we have our new adjusted pattern piece. You're going to take your paper scissors and you're going to cut along the edges there. Now we're going to sew the fashion fabric. So we're going to start out with the bodice. Now because it is chiffon and it is sheer, we are going to underline. So what that means is we are going to attach another fabric underneath, and in this case it's a matte fabric so that it is not see-through. And we are going to do a basting stitch all the way around. So make sure you transfer your pattern markings on both pattern pieces, both the underlining as well as your chiffon fabric. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just pinning both of them in place. And the next thing that we are going to do is take it to the sewing machine and we're going to do a basting stitch. So increase that stitch length and then go all the way around all of the edges. Now you can do this by hand if you'd like. It's just a lot quicker if you do it by machine. Now that that is all done, we're going to flip it over and we are now going to do the dart. Now to start out, we want to make sure that the fabric doesn't shift or slide. So I'm going to pin around the outside of the dart, and then with the same long stitch, I'm going to stitch on the lines of the dart, starting at the base and going to the point, as well as right down the middle. So now that we have that stabilized and stitched in place, we are actually going to put the darts together. So the exact same way that you do all your darts, you're going to want to pin those together, right sides together obviously, making sure that everything lines up. Remember to change your stitch length back down to the regular 2.5 millimeters or whatever you've found works well when you're working with whatever fabric you're using. And then we're going to stitch that dart all the way till the end, leave a tail because we want to tie off the ends. We do not want to backstitch, it'll create too much bulk on the end of that. So after you've tied it off, what you can do is you can pull the basting stitches out. And once you've done that, you have your dart. And you can take that over to the ironing board and get that pressed. So next up we have the ties. Now you can see how it's originally cut out. I just loosely cut them with scissors. It's horrible. So what I did is I put fusible interfacing on, and then I am cutting it with a rotary cutter. And if you need any tips and tricks on how to cut with chiffon fabric, you can check out my video. I'll leave a link in the description down below for you. And so now we are on to the ties. So with that, you are going to fold over one of the small edges, and then you're going to fold it over a second time, and then stitch all the way down. You can see I'm using a piece of tearaway interfacing that I use with my embroidery. You can also use tissue paper if you don't have any of that handy. And then on the ends of all of this, I am just putting a fray check just to make sure that it stays. Now we are going to add the ties onto the bodice front. And so just pin them matching where the dots are. And this is the piece number 10, which is the back piece. And we're going to work on the sleeves. So the exact same way that we did it with our muslin is how we are going to do the sleeves here. So we're going to stitch the sleeve curves, and remembering we did underline all of these pieces here. And so stitch piece 8 to 9. And we take it to our machine. And with the underlining, I found that I didn't need to use the tissue paper method when sewing, just because that additional fabric in there provided enough stability that it didn't slip too much. But if you are using another slinkier fabric, you might want to consider doing the tissue paper method as you sew. Now that you have the sleeve all done, we need to attach it to the front and back of our bodice sections. So that is piece 10 and piece 1. And so we're just going to line up matching the dots and being very careful not to flip around your sleeves. I did get, when I've made this pattern before, flip them around to the other side. And so now we are working on the ruffle. So we're going to pin the ruffle in place. We want to make it one big long ruffle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a narrow hem. And so I like to stitch along the edge, 1/4 of an inch, flip it over, and then stitch again. And then I like to trim really closely. If you want, you can flip it over once more and stitch, and that'll really conceal all the ends. Honestly, with this fabric, I didn't need to do that. Then I ran a running stitch through all of the length of the ruffle and gathered it up. And then I am putting on the ruffle starting at the center back, and then I'm pinning each of the ends, and then I'm just going to distribute all of the gathering evenly along the top bodice section here. And a tip when you're doing the gathering is to sew 2 rows of gathering stitches as opposed to just a single one. It makes the gathering easier when you pull things along. So once you've got it good, you are going to stitch that in place. And when you flip it right side out, you should have a lovely seam on either side. We are just going to add the ties here to the inside on the lining pieces, just matching the dots, fold over the edges on the bottom of the lining. That's going to help us when we hand stitch the skirt hem in place. And now we're going to pin our lining to our dress back. So same as we did before. And now that that's all stitched, when we flip it out, your ruffle has beautiful edges on both sides, nothing is visible. And then we're going to understitch. So making sure that you have your seam allowances pushed towards your wrong side on the lining and understitch in there. And I'm just flipping it right side out here. And I am working on the sleeves now. And so just matching up our side seams here. And we're going to pin the side bodice seams on both sides. And after I tried it on, I decided I did not like the sleeves. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually modifying the sleeves and am cutting them down. And in fact, I cut them down even further to make it completely sleeveless. I like the look of the sheer flounce going over my shoulder a lot more. So that is how I modified that. So you can see that's the finished edge of the shoulder seam here. And this is just how you do it. So I took both ends, folded them over, and sandwiched them, and then stitched them all around. So next we're going to go and work on the skirt pieces, which is piece 12. Stitch them together, and then you want to cut the seam. So I did wrong sides together to start, and then right sides together because I wanted to do a French seam to finish the inside of this. So you can see this is how the dress wraps. Then I had decided to attach the gigantic ruffle that we had modified and put it all along the skirt. And I'm clipping off any of the excess here, just so we don't have any additional bulk. And then I decided to stitch it one more time to make it come down. And now I'm attaching the skirt bottom to the skirt top, leaving out the lining. So the lining is something that we are going to hand stitch in place after, but you will have the skirt bottom and underlining and bodice. So right here you can see that I have the dress completely inside out, and I am just hand stitching the top of the lining to the lining of the skirt. Well, there you have it. A maxi dress for your next romantic night out or beach holiday. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them down in the comment section down below. Now I know working with chiffon can be a little bit finicky at times. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link in the description box below on another video that I did with some tips and tricks on working with chiffon and these difficult slinky fabrics. So if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification down below so you can see more of my videos. Thanks for coming, makers. And until next time, let's get your sewspiration on. Bye guys.